J-Tech Studios in Atlanta, Georgia. It's America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. And now, here are your hosts, Tom Bastek and Mike Jacobs.
And hello, everyone, and welcome in to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won. I'm the game show guy, Tom Bastek.
And I'm the other game show guy, Mike Jacobs. Hello, Tom. Gobble, gobble. Happy Thanksgiving. I hope you had a wonderful holiday.
Oh, yeah, man, it was good. It was interesting because there was obviously no family. It was just me and my wife and my brother because he's in our pod. And the three of us ate way too much. I had to freeze stuffing. Now, that's my favorite part of the meal. I never had to freeze stuffing ever before, but that's how much I made this year.
Wow. Well, I feel like a lot of people have that same story, and I'm glad to hear that while this Thanksgiving may not be spent in the company of loved ones, the tradition of eating far too much is still alive and well. Makes me very happy.
Yeah, I lost 16 pounds leading up to Thanksgiving just so I could put it all back on in one day.
Yep. I think I'm probably in that same boat.
I think the best part is the first time in a very, very long time that I actually made a turkey. I don't normally get to host the holidays, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was literally Googling how to roast a turkey before we put the turkey in the oven, and it came out immaculately perfect.
Awesome. So I haven't had actual turkey in quite some time. Unfortunately, my wife is allergic.
Yeah. You get the tofurkey?
No, well, we usually will do some sort of like maybe a ham or chicken or something like that. This year, so we're trying to watch what is it, Saturated Fats, I think it is. I don't know.
Right.
She's doing it. I'm just going along with it. So we did a roasted chicken. It was really, really good.
Nice. As far as I'm concerned, I don't feel like the turkey's the best part of the meal by any means. Anyway, I've always been a sides guy. I'm a huge green bean casserole, stuffing, mashed potatoes dude. That's me.
I totally agree. All the stuff that comes with Thanksgiving is really what it's all about. Now, don't get me wrong. I do like a turkey, and my dad in the sort of more recent years has taken to frying turkeys, which I think is really, really good.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm definitely on board with it, but it has been a nice sort of change of pace for the past few years to mix it up and go with some different primary dishes to. But again, it's all about the sides. I agree.
All right, well, hopefully everybody out there had a great Thanksgiving and is ready to now move forward for the holiday season. We bought an amazing amount of Black Friday sales because there was weeks and weeks leading up to it, which is a story for another day. But I will tell you that I literally bought every sheetrock screw I'm going to need on my new renovation.
Well, there you go. I got to say, I'm typically not a huge fan of the idea of Black Friday, so I try to not participate.
Sure.
Though there was a artist that I like very much released an album on Black Friday, so I had to buy that. But outside of that, I did not really participate much.
I love the fact that there really wasn't a Black Friday because people couldn't go out to a lot of these stores. That to me is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe one of the sort of net goods for the world will be that the idea of Black Friday will dwindle after all this COVID business passes.
Yeah.
We'll see. I don't know.
Who knows? All right, this week, Mike, we're doing classic concentration, or I guess we're actually doing all of the concentrations. I grew up with classic concentration, so that's what I know it as. But I mean, it was just concentration originally.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. As a matter of fact, still to this day, classic concentration is the only one I've actually seen. I didn't go back and watch some of the older ones.
Right.
Maybe I should have, considering we're doing a podcast on it. I read a lot about it though. I think that's fine.
Okay.
No, but yeah, it was interesting to me how iconic this show was to me that I never really noticed it. Like I think I've said this about other shows where when I started watching it was just like putting on a comfortable pair of shoes. Be like, oh yeah, that's what this is.
Right.
And I immediately went back, and it was not even a nostalgia trip. It was just like Yep. Like, I don't know. It was very, very comforting to watch.
It was for me. And, the thing is, I had totally forgotten about it until Alex Trebek passed. And I think it was Christian, actually, that posted something from Concentration on there because Trebek did host for a period of time, which we'll talk about.
Yep.
And I went, oh, my God, Concentration. Yes, we need to feature this show.
Well, and it was kismet, really, because at the same time, I had just downloaded the Pluto TV app and tuned into Buzzer, and they were rerunning all the classic Concentration episodes in memoriam of Alex. And so I had the exact same reaction. I saw it, I was like, oh, man, yeah, I forgot all about this show. We should do that for sure.
All right, well, speaking of good ideas, God, let's hope. Let's do the news with Christian and try to stump the chump this week.
Yeah, I'm not feeling hopeful, but we'll see. We got a fan-submitted question this time, so let's see what happens.
Light up your cigarette, crack open a beer, put the kiddos to bed. From chaos around the world to carnage in your very own front yard, it's time for the news.
Thank you very much. This is the news, brought to you by BuzzerBlog.com. I'm Christian Carrion. 3 weeks after the death of Alex Trebek, Jeopardy is back in production with a new host. 74-game winner and greatest of all-time champion Ken Jennings will serve as the first of what is expected to be several Jeopardy guest hosts. The iconic quiz show, which had been hosted by Trebek from its syndicated premiere in 1984 until his death on November 8th of this year from advanced stage pancreatic cancer, resumes production of new episodes today, November 30th. In a statement on Twitter addressing these plans, Jeopardy executive producer Mike Richards said, quote, "Alex believed in the importance of Jeopardy and always said that he wanted the show to go on after him. We will honor his legacy by continuing to produce the game he loved." Other guest hosts have not yet been announced, and it's worth noting, at least to me, that a petition on change.org to hire LeVar Burton as the new host of Jeopardy has close to 100,000 signatures. And I only personally feel like I called it.
Well, I mean, in all fairness, you and I and Mike talked about that a while back where you said that you really wanted LeVar Burton to be the next host. I signed that petition before you even told me about it. That's the great thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such it's just such a good choice. It's full circle, isn't it? Because he was so famous for hosting Reading Rainbow for so many years, and a lot of the kids who learned the importance of reading and knowledge from his show are now of the age that Jeopardy's looking for, in terms of contestants, in terms of viewers. So I think it's just a beautiful sort of potential full circle moment to have him on the show.
Would be a very nice pick.
All right, well that's great. Let's hope that we get to see him rotate through at some point as a guest host, if nothing else.
I will say, if Ken Jennings is now being the first guest host, that feels to me like a let's get this out of the way and the rumors kind of situation. It doesn't seem like he would likely be the permanent replacement or successor.
No, and remember that for this season, he did become one of the consulting producers. So
right.
it may have just been a situation where he was already in the building, and maybe
that's true too. Yeah,
having a big, highly publicized search for a new host, they just start promoting from within.
Right. All right, what else you got for us, Christian?
Well, over 50 years after its final regularly scheduled episode, a classic quiz show is returning to television. College Bowl is coming to NBC, hosted by legendary football player Peyton Manning. The series, which originally aired on radio in 1953 before moving to CBS between 1959 and 63 and NBC from 63 to 70, featured two 4-member teams representing various colleges competing in a series of question rounds. Now, the new version is produced by Peyton, Eli, and Cooper Manning, as well as Mark Itkin, a reality TV pioneer who also had a hand in the foreign reality show Import Game, helping usher Big Brother, Fear Factor, and Hell's Kitchen, as well as many other shows, onto U.S. airwaves. So, College Bowl coming back. Quiz Bowl is one of those things I definitely feel like I missed out on in high school and in college. So, I'm excited to see some form of it come to TV for a mass audience.
So it's not sports themed?
No, College Bowl, they sort of carry the motif of like a college football rivalry sort of game, but it was always like trivia. So it's like Quiz Bowl, but it's kind of dressed up as football for TV.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, I never did College Bowl in high school. I had the opportunity to, never did it. It was like, that was for the geeks, and now I'm the geek that should have done it.
I find it fascinating that this is the first I'm hearing of this. This is not a phenomenon I'm familiar with, which seems very strange to me.
I can't believe you didn't have college bowl in high school. It was a real big thing. I mean, colleges obviously had it, but we had it in high school. I mean,
yeah, I definitely. Well, I mean, I went to art college, and I went to a real artsy fartsy alternative high school where we had like different grades and stuff. So, we didn't even have a football team. So
it's really intense. There's a show on in the UK called University Challenge that's very reminiscent of this. It may even be a direct copy of that format, but yeah, they have different colleges competing, and it's a really intense game. So I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Also, Mike, you would know this. Christian, I'm not sure you would either, but the Mannings are very likable and really great ex-football players. The fact that Peyton's going to be the host, I think that adds something to it as opposed to taking something away from it.
I am familiar with Peyton Manning from those, was it Nationwide commercials, I believe?
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got it.
All right, Christian, what else do you have for us?
Well, Deadline reported recently that Fox has ordered an American remake of the Spanish variety series Game of Talents. Let's Make a Deal host Wayne Brady, who is season 2 of Fox's The Masked Singer. Let's Make a Deal host Wayne Brady, who won season 2 of Fox's The Masked Singer last year, will host and executive produce the series, which is in production in Los Angeles for a 2021 premiere. Now, this non-scripted format originated in Spain and sees contestants attempting to guess the performers' hidden talents based on only their first impression and a variety of clues. The game mixes a large-scale variety show with a high-intensity investigative game. I think it sounds like fun, and growing up in a household who watched a lot of Spanish variety shows, I'm excited to see how they do with this one. I think it's a really interesting and fun sort of form of entertainment.
The game show format of it, though, sounds like what was that? It was a game show on Nickelodeon hosted by Summer Sanders. And they had, like, kids would go on and they would have, like, a hidden talent.
Yeah, Figure It Out.
Yeah, that's what it was. Thank you.
Yeah, it does, where you all had, like, some kind of... You know what it reminded me of? There was a show a few years ago on NBC called Identity with Penn from Penn and Teller, and you had to guess what somebody did for a living, just, like, based on their looks.
It's so interesting to me. I hate, with an absolute passion, The Masked Singer.
I do, too. I'm with you on that 100%.
Same.
Terrible. So it'll be just interesting to see how this one goes for me. I don't know. All right, Christian, what else do you have?
Well, finally, I don't know if anybody saw Wheel of Fortune in the past couple days, but we finally saw the downfall of Pat Sajak.
Stop!
Well, not really.
Stop!
No, not at all.
Case.
Not at all. But you know what? If for a host who has such an endearing personality and seemingly such patience with so many stupid guesses and stupid calls over the years, to see him finally lose it a little bit was a lot of fun. So we had a contestant whose mom was on the show back in the 80s, and he was on the show recently, and he solved a crossword puzzle. So you had 4 words, each of them with a common theme. So kitchen blank was the theme for the puzzle. And one of the words was oven. So he, after he won the puzzle, said, "Who calls it a kitchen oven?" Which is not wrong. But it didn't sit well
I'm on board with his assessment there.
Right. But it didn't sit well with Pat Sajak because he said, "You shut up. You guessed the puzzle. You don't get to comment on it now." and they got a little bit of a laugh, but it was interesting that there was a tinge of sincerity to his frustration, and he apologized to him at the end of the game, and he said, "I'm sorry I yelled at you."
I will say it's a lot harsher on paper than when you actually watch it. But it is very much it's what Al Franken used to describe as joking on the square. Like, he's fooling around, but you can catch that, like you said, that tinge of like, ooh, he was actually not happy about that.
I love it. I love when things like that happen, especially on game shows. I was talking to a game show fan from my podcast a couple weeks ago, and we talked about Gene Rayburn from Match Game, how sometimes things would happen that would genuinely make him angry. And to me, that just makes for a fascinating performer. That's why Letterman was so good for so long. He just clearly hated so much of what was going on around him, and it was fun to see that peek out a little bit once in a while.
Uh-huh.
To me, I feel like, this poor guy, Pat Sajak, has been putting up with this crap for so long. Like, give him the pass, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, I
mean,
totally give him the pass.
Oh,
Yeah,
no, we
absolutely.
do. We do. I know we do.
Oh.
Twitter didn't.
Well, does Twitter ever give a pass when a pass
I
is
mean-
necessary?
It's a very good point.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I could not care less what happened on Twitter.
Now, to be totally honest with you, I could not care less about what Pat Sajak said because he's Pat Sajak.
I mean, yeah, he can kind of say whatever he wants at this point.
He's kind of earned it a little bit.
It's true. It's true.
All right, is that it, Christian, for news this week?
Speaking of Pat Sajak, talk about somebody who would be fascinating to see as a Jeopardy guest host.
That would be cool.
He did do one episode back for the April Fools. God, what year was it? 97, 93?
97. Yep, 97.
97. Wow. I didn't get to see the episode, but I heard he didn't do bad.
No, he did it. He did a great job, actually.
All right. Well, Christian, what about this week in game show history?
Well, this week in game show history, we are going back to December 1st, 1994, and the premiere of a channel that has influenced my life as well as the lives of, I'm willing to bet, many of the people who listen to this show. We're talking about the launch of Game Show Network. Now,
Yes.
there's a bit of a history here. So Game Show Network was originally a Sony venture, and Sony had this technology by which they could convert tapes, and coinciding with that, they struck a deal actually specifically with Mark Goodson Productions to license their content to air on what they would call the Game Show channel. And Mark Goodson Productions was going to have an equity stake in this new venture, and they actually signed the contract 11 days before Mark Goodson died. So this was one of the last things he ever signed off on. And
Wow.
later, back in early '94, they pulled out of the deal, but they still licensed their 30,000 episode catalog to Sony to air on Game Show Network. And Jack Barry, Dan Enright Productions, who is famous for Tic Tac Doe, The Joker's Wild, Bullseye, all these different shows from the 70s and 80s. Oh, I had a burp, excuse me.
You're fine.
All these different shows from the 70s and 80s contributed to that library as well. So they hit the air on December 1st, 1994. What's My Line was the first game show to ever air on Game Show Network. And originally, it didn't reach a lot of homes. It was a satellite-only channel. And so what a lot of people who were early adopters of Game Show Network remember fondly about the channel was the code that you used to have to use to find the channel on those big giant satellite dishes. So Game Show Network went by the code G7T6. And I forget if it's been confirmed or not, but there are 7 letters in Goodson and 6 letters in Todman. So a lot of people think that's where that code originally came from. But so when Game Show Network first started, a huge repository of Goodson Todman shows, Barry and Enright shows. They used to air, now you see it, What's My Line Password? The Price is Right with Bob Barker was a huge hit on that channel for a long time. Match Game was in reruns for a long time, still is on Game Show Network. But I remember first getting Game Show Network in my home and just it opening my eyes to all of these shows I had never heard of before. I think Password was the first show I ever watched on Game Show Network. Just a huge influence for me. And now we have Buzzer and we have YouTube, but there weren't many places to watch retro game shows back in the day. Family Channel had just stopped their game show block about a year after Game Show Network debuted, so they were really the only game in town for a while. But yeah, lots of amazing times watching Game Show Network back in the day.
Yeah, agreed. Lots of late nights in college where I had Game Show Network on in the background as I was working on projects and pulling all-nighters and whatnot.
One of the things that fascinated me about Game Show Network when it first started was they had so many interactive games. They really tried to pioneer this idea of you call a number, play a game, use your touch-tone phone, and you can hit the buttons, and whatever choice you hit will appear on the screen. And they really pushed that incredibly hard. Represented a huge resurgence in career of Peter Tamarkin, who had not hosted a show since Wipeout back in the late 80s, and 6 years later he got a lot of screen time as host of a lot of those interactive game shows. So he really made it big for a second time as a result of the launch of Game Show Network.
Mike, it's that time. What about stumping the chumping?
Well, so for the first time this week, we have a question that does not relate to the show that we are doing, because we've started getting some fan submissions here, and
Excellent.
of course our fans don't know what shows are coming up, so they just submit questions they want to ask.
Thank you for sending them in, everyone. By the way,
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, by the way, send them via social, or you can email us directly through the website. Leave a comment on a blog, whatever you'd like. Go ahead and send it in, though. Please do.
All right, so Christian, as I'm sure you are aware, as are many people, we've talked about it on the podcast, Alan Ludden, of course, met his wife, Betty White, as a contestant on a game show. But in 1981, what other game show host met their wife as a contestant?
Well, it's an interesting story, really, because it doesn't sound like it should be legal that the host of a show can marry a contestant.
No,
it seems like sort of conflict of interest.
Yeah.
But this was a host that was a famous flirt and a famous suave character on TV, and it wasn't so much a character as it was himself. Richard Dawson was that guy, and Richard Dawson was, with the salt and pepper beard, with the quick wit. He was a definite ladies' man, and he met the love of his life. He married her, and they were married until the day he died. Her name was Gretchen, and her family were contestants on Family Feud, and they played the game. They did relatively well, and after the taping, he called Gretchen at her home and asked her on a date. And I think she thought it was a prank at first because, Richard Dawson is calling. Like, what time are you free this weekend? But it wasn't a prank, and they fell in love, and they dated for a long time before they got married. But it lasted the rest of Richard Dawson's life, and that's how they met. So Richard Dawson meeting Gretchen. I think Johnson was the last name of the family.
Wow.
But
well done.
Yeah. I mean, incredible story, right?
Well, what I like is that for as well known, like you said, he's a very famous flirt, kisses all the ladies on the show. For being that personality, for him to have met one of those people and actually made it a long-lasting, lifelong relationship, I think it's a fabulous, juxtaposition to what you would think his story is.
I also feel like, she knew exactly what she was getting into.
Oh, sure.
Like
you mean like
get
with
upset
him
about him kissing on other women is what I'm getting at.
Yes. I agree 100%.
Right. Well, one of the things he mentioned when he came back to host Family Feud in the 90s after Ray Combs was let go, he hosted the final season. And one of the things he mentioned was that since he's married and he has a kid, they had a daughter, he promised that he wouldn't kiss any more girls on TV because mommy and mommy wouldn't like that. So he never did on that version of the show. So it changed his tone a little bit.
Wow.
Good for him.
Yeah, but once again, here we go. He knew that question right out the gate, Mike. We've got to do better than this.
Yeah.
All right, Christian, this week we're doing concentration. Your thoughts?
Concentration, as far as pure game shows go, is just such perfection. I mean, you take the idea of a children's card game, you add that extra element of revealing a puzzle underneath. It just makes for incredible play-along TV. It was the longest-running game show on TV for a really long time until The Price is Right surpassed it in the late 80s. There were so many different versions throughout the years. You had NBC that lasted from 58 to 73. You had the version with Jack Nars, which was on from 73 to 78. That's on in reruns right now. And then Classic Concentration, of course, with Alex Trebek, which is on in reruns on Buzzer. All of them have this incredible play-along value. They're just such fun shows with excellent hosts. Classic Concentration, fun fact, is the first TV show to do live, on-the-fly 3D animation. The revealing of the numbers on what was now a CGI board was the first use of 3D animation, on the fly on TV. Originally, there was plan to build a physical game board for Classic Concentration. They got the quote back from whoever was going to build it in California. Came out to about $150,000. Would have been one of the most expensive boards ever built. So instead, one of the producer's sons decided to write this software from scratch on an Amiga computer. No, I'm sorry. Write the software from scratch on a PC. And what you don't see on the reruns of Classic Concentration is that the contestants are looking at a big screen TV connected to the computer that shows the puzzle. And I mean, just incredible technology for the time. I think one of the first uses of a completely virtual game board, which of course you'd see in so many different shows later. But yeah, Concentration, I love Concentration. Not to mention the home versions, not to mention the computer versions, the Apple II version of Classic Concentration I grew up with. Just a fantastic show.
All I could say is 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
1, 4.
No match. No match.
I love it.
Yep.
And Alex Trebek, amazing in that. I'm glad we got to talk about it today because with him just passing in the last couple of weeks, it's nice to still remembering him 3 weeks later. So
right, and I did mention on that episode where we first talked about his passing that Classic Concentration came at a very lucrative time for Alex Trebek because he was hosting Concentration on NBC, he was hosting To Tell the Truth on NBC, and he was hosting Jeopardy. So pulling down 3 different paychecks for 3 different shows. One of the few hosts to do that successfully. And I mean, and who would do it better than Alex Trebek?
Very true.
all right, Christian, do you have a plug for us for Buzzer Blog?
I sure do. BuzzerBlog.com, the #1 game show website in the world. Whether you're looking for information on new series, returning series, remakes of Spanish variety shows, with Whose Line Is It Anyway cast members hosting, BuzzerBlog.com is the place to go. Whether you're a professional, whether you're an insider, whether you're a big old nerd, BuzzerBlog.com.
Thank you, Christian. We're going to stump you next week. We're going to work on it.
I look forward to it. I cannot wait to be stumped. I don't think it's possible.
Oh,
I can't wait.
We got a good one lined up for next week too. I believe if I haven't chosen, we have a couple on deck, but one of them is a multi-part answer, so I think I'm going to go with that one.
Oh. I'm going to eat my Wheaties then. Bring it on.
Thanks, buddy. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Remember, once again, if you'd like to submit a question, please do. We've got a couple on deck right now we're pretty excited about. Just hit us through social and or through email. You can email us right off the site. It's great.
Yep.
All right, Mike, I'm not going to waste any time. I am excited about the gameplay for Concentration.
Yeah, well, we're going to waste a little bit of time for a break, but then we'll come back and jump right into the gameplay.
Fantastic. You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won. All right, and welcome in. That is the theme from Classic Concentration. And yes, I chose Classic Concentration, Mike. I'm sorry, it's the one I like the best, and it's the one I'm familiar with.
I mean, you have my full support there. To me, it's the most iconic one. Maybe it's because of our age and the era that we were watching the show, but that feels like the right choice to me.
Yeah, look, and if you don't like it, you can just criticize me. I'm okay with that.
Feel free to write us in.
Yes, tell us how awful we are. All right, Mike, it is the gameplay portion of Concentration. Hit it.
Yeah, and as with the theme song, the gameplay varies from version to version, so I'll kind of speak in generalities, but your mileage may vary depending on what version you're watching. But ultimately, you got 2 contestants playing against each other. Sometimes they would be a returning champion, sometimes not, either because of rules or because they didn't return.
But they were presented with a board with a number of panels. Initially, it was 30. I believe it went down to 25 in classic concentration. But each panel conceals a prize behind it. And then over all of those panels, there would be 2 of each prize. So, for example, a washer-dryer, there would be 2 different panels concealing a washer and dryer. And then the contestants would more or less take turns choosing 2 panels and just seeing what's behind them. If they get a match, for example, they find both of the washer and dryers, they get that prize added to their prize pool, as it were, and then those panels are removed from the board and reveal a picture underneath. This picture underneath, it's what's known as a rebus puzzle. In simplest terms, it's really just a combination of letters, numbers, pictures that you sort of combine and add up to make a common phrase or a name or a title of something like that.
Yeah,
I'm sure even outside of the game, people have experienced these in one way or another.
Yeah, for me, where I remember them from more than anything is on the back of beer caps. My dad, my mom, or my aunt, my uncle, when we'd all get together, they'd be drinking beer, and I mean the different beers. Let's see, it was on Lucky, it was on Ballantine. In Lone Star's done it in the recent years from like 2001 on.
Yeah, in college, me and my buddies used to get those little Mickey's, the little hand grenade bottles.
Yeah, the little guys.
Yeah, those have them on it too.
See, there you go. And basically, it's a little picture. So, like, you would have, like, instead of the letter I, you'd have an actual picture of an I. Instead of love, you'd have a heart, which is probably the easiest way. They'd probably do something different for love. And then instead of you, you'd have a picture of a U, an EWEU.
Oh, like the lamb, yeah.
Right. And that would mean I love you. And I remember my dad, and it's kind of funny that we're doing that this week because November 30th is the anniversary of his death. But I remember him giving me those bottle caps to try to solve. So that was always a fun memory there.
Oh, we can dedicate this episode to him.
I like it. That's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where I know Rebus is from, and they're difficult. They're not easy.
They are very difficult, especially in this show. There's a lot of like slurring of words together, and you got to kind of like slant rhyme isn't the right word, but sort of slant pronounce things. Like the example I can think of is the answer was George Burns, and so for the George they had a J and then an or, like for rowing,
right, and
then another J. And so, you know, it's not J or J, it's George. So you kind of got to like slur it together. George, right?
The other thing they would do is they would take for words and slur them with other words. So you would get the part of the next word in the end of the word. So in other words, let's say the words were to speak. You would have number 2 cards. So it would be twos. And you'd have a mountain peak. So you'd have twos peak. To speak.
Yep.
So they put it together like that. So that makes it a little harder, you know?
It makes it a lot harder. These were pretty difficult. I'm not good at them at all. I don't think I would do well on this show outside of the just remembering where stuff is part of it.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, when you reveal the panels, you can guess whatever the rebus is, and there's absolutely no penalty for this. Even if you get it wrong, your turn continues. You don't pass turn. You don't pass turn until.
So you should guess every time then.
Well, the strategy there is that if you do that, you may be giving information to your opponent that they have not deciphered yet. So in that George Burns example, the oar was actually an oar on a boat strapped to the top of a car. So there's a lot of room for interpretation there. So if you figured out that it's George and you say George Clooney, right, you've just told the opponent that it's George, and they may not have figured it out. That they may have been thinking Jacarge. You know,
I love it.
Classic comedian Jacarge Burns.
Jacarge Burns, yeah.
Right, of course. So you know, you don't necessarily want to try and guess until you know you can get it right.
Makes sense.
And that's the thing with these prizes that you're winning too, is they are just being put into a prize pool. You still have to solve the puzzle in order to get the prize that you have accumulated. So if you won that washer and dryer pair because you found that pair, but your opponent actually ended up solving the rebus, you're not going to get that washer and dryer.
That's
not
kind of
either,
a bummer there. That's
right. Yeah, they're not either unless they use their take. And so that's the thing, is behind all these panels, in addition to the prizes, there's also takes,
which if you get a pair of takes, you earn a take where you can take away one of the opponent's prizes and add it to your prize pool.
Cool.
And there's also wilds. And it's interesting the way the wilds worked initially was it would just match whatever prize you got. You get the prize and they'd reveal the 2 tiles, but that would leave behind an orphan prize. So if we're talking with this washer and dryer example, you get the washer and dryer in the wild, and then there's still a washer and dryer out there that can't be won, right? Unless you guys...
Right, so that's just getting in the way.
Right, and so in later versions, they would reveal then that match for the prize, and you would actually get all 3 panels revealed for the rebus puzzles. So it's almost like the wild increased in value over the course of the show.
I have to tell you, you keep mentioning washer dryer, and my wife and I just purchased a brand spanking new, well, new to us, washer and dryer at a scratch and dent place, and we got like our first what I call adult washer and dryer. Like normally we go to a scratch and dent place and we get like the pair for $250.
Right.
We got the pair for $1,300.
Ooh.
And it's scratch and dent. The washer alone's worth over $1,700. It's got like all these crazy features that I'm not even gonna know how to use.
I will say this for the rest of my life. I will never buy an appliance other than at a scratch and dent place. They are so much cheaper and they're totally fine.
Yep.
And I mean, the last place I bought one at, we had an issue with the dryer. It like fried some stuff or something.
Sure.
And they just came out, took it away, and brought a new one. No questions asked.
Yeah. It is
great.
It is amazing. There's a reason why they're always on sale at Home Depot in every email that you get from them. It's because it doesn't cost them anything to make it, and they can drop the price on them tremendously.
Oh, yeah.
I think outside of jewelry, they're probably the most overpriced retail item.
Yeah, you might be right about that.
We're gonna get all kinds of bad fan mail now from appliance guys. I can see it coming.
Well, ask me if I care.
All right, there you go.
But yeah, that's most of the gameplay. The original version did not have a bonus round. The winner's circle with the I guess semicircle of cars around them. That came with classic concentration. So even though that was not an original feature, we should talk about it because to me that was just like the coolest thing, seeing all those cars up there and be like, which one are you going to win? So the contestant, whoever solved the rebus puzzle, is given a board of 15 panels, 7 of which are matches. 1 is a decoy, but it's all the names of the cars,
right?
That you could potentially win. So you're given a base time of 35 seconds, but then they add on an additional 5 seconds for each time that someone has been to that round but not won a car. So obviously it gets easier as rounds go on. And you're not revealing a rebus this round. You're literally just making matches, but you go through the 15 panels and try to match the names of the cars that are in the winner's circle. If you get all of the matches, then the last car that you matched is the car that you won for that day. And it's interesting. There's clearly a strategy to this because almost to a person, everybody does it the same way, but I don't necessarily see the advantage of it. But the way that it's laid out is that it's 3 columns of 5 down or 5 across, 3 across 5 down, basically.
3 across 5 down. Okay.
Yeah. And so people will go 1, 2 to reveal those 2 and then skip 3 and then 4, 5 and then skip 6, so on and so forth down the whole way.
Really?
And it seems like obviously you can make whatever matches you can along the way, but you're really just trying to gain information on those left 2 columns. Yeah, but then you go back and say 3, and now you know exactly where 3 is, and you can go to it and find it.
I don't see how that's really any different than just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You know what I'm saying?
I agree, and it must just be a spatial thing that your brain is able to place it better.
Yeah,
I couldn't figure it out, but it was really, it's like the RSTLNE of this show in that everybody does it, and there's very clearly a reason why, but I don't know.
If everybody's doing it, there's definitely a reason why they're doing it, but I mean, I personally, I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
To be honest, I've never even noticed it. I've seen a bunch of episodes of this, and I've never noticed that they all do it the same way.
I mean, maybe I just hit like a strange streak where like the 4 or 5 I watched, everybody did it, but it was very consistent that they all did it that way.
If we had any scientists out there that know why the human body works better to do it that way, or the human mind, let me know.
Yeah. Well, and I will say one of the women who did it, she got on there with the base 35 seconds, and that was it. And which, Trebek often makes comments about how difficult it is if you're, the base time person. And she did it with time to spare. So
obviously that strategy is pretty good.
Yeah, there was one episode I watched. It was actually recently posted, and I think Christian may have even been the one who put it out there about how they were having mechanical failures, and Trebek handled it the right way by just giving her the car of her choice or whatever, because of how many times the game actually went down during her final.
Oh, really?
But
Interesting.
she was killing it. Now, she may have had more than 35 seconds, but this woman was slaughtering the game. She was going to win regardless. I mean, he did the right thing and said, "Oh, we've had 3 different errors or 2 different errors or whatever it was," and he gave the card to her. But I mean, she was not going to not win. She was
Right.
killing it.
But yeah, I mean that's about it for gameplay. It's interesting how there's it's a quick and fairly simple game, but the two aspects of it both combined require a lot of strategy. I mean, the name concentration is very apt. You have to be paying attention. You have to know where stuff is.
Sure.
And so that part of it, I think I would do well at. I don't necessarily remember what number things were under, but I remember where on the board it was.
Yeah, I personally, I'm not very good at concentration or memory games in general. I don't know what it is. I mean, I'm good. I can do I knew that was somewhere up around the left-hand side, but I can't tell you which card it was, kind of thing.
Yeah. No, for some reason, I just would immediately be like, oh, yeah, it's that one. Or sometimes, if it's the only frame of reference I have is that I have a concentration iPad game. But often I'll be like, oh, that card was up here in the top left, and I'll tap it, and it's like, oh, no, that's not the right one. And I'll go right, one card to the right, and that was it. So.
Yeah, that's me. That's me going, okay, I know it's up in this corner. It's one of these 3 cards right here.
Right. But yeah, as far as the rebuses go, like I said, I'm terrible at those.
They were tough, man.
So
they were way tougher
game.
than I thought. I went back and looked at some of them, and they were really tough. And I was like,
there's
holy
even some that Alex makes comments on of I don't get this one, because he has to go up and explain it.
Sure.
Sure. Each time. And there was one where he went up to explain it, and he's like, I guess this is how this happens, but
well,
he sides with the contestants for not being able to get it.
Right. One of the things that I will say is that he does a very good job of pronouncing it exactly the way it is. So he wouldn't say George, he would say George.
Yes. Well, he does the sort of transition where he would go J or J, George, and
right.
show you how to bend
how to do it. Yeah.
And that's the thing to a lot of the strategy in this show is watching specifically this show to know how the writers are coming up with these rebus puzzles.
Right.
You can prepare for Price is Right without ever watching Price is Right. I don't think you can prepare for this show without knowing exactly what tricks the writers are using for the rebus puzzles.
Anything else you've got for us before we take a break and head over to our wonderful history?
No, I would love to take a break. Let's do that.
All right, quick break, and coming back, we'll do History of Concentration. You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won. We're back. Episode number 26, segment number 3. It's concentration this week. And Mike, it's time for the history.
Indeed. And while classic concentration, as we mentioned, is maybe the most iconic version, the show started long before that. So the quiz show scandals of the 50s that we're all familiar with, those had hit, and they'd hit hard and canceled a lot of shows. So networks were in desperate need of some new programming.
Right.
So NBC decided they would start making some new shows in-house, Concentration being one of them, as well as the others were 21, Do Re Mi, which I'm not familiar with. I'm going to have to look into more of that one. That name intrigues me. And Tic Tac Doe. I mentioned those. They'll come back up again later. It's there's more interesting facts about those. But yeah, so like I say, NBC bought the sort of concept, but it was really a very much a group effort to develop the show. There were a lot of people involved in the writing, namely the 4 big names were Jack Barry, Dan Enright, Robert Noah, and Buddy Piper. Those were the 4 big developers of the show. And Buddy Piper, in fact, through the closing credits of the show, he is given the credit as having the concept. So clearly he was one of the masterminds, but then all four of them developed into the show. And like I said, it was done in-house by NBC, made specifically for them.
Right.
Began airing on August 25th, 1958. Hugh Downs as the host and Art James as the announcer. He would occasionally step in as the substitute. Hugh Downs, of course, now known for many other things. I primarily know him from 60 Minutes, right?
Yeah, I think so too. That's me. Speaking of Art James, real quick, that was actually his first television role, and coincidentally, his last television role was subbing in on Classic Concentration later on.
Oh, wow. Well, good for him.
Yeah, how about that? Little first and last there.
That's also pretty cool that your first television role is announcing for a big deal game show like this, because that's the thing is I think even at the time this was kind of a big deal, because like I said, it was the first one to hit the air after, or one of the first ones to hit the air after this quiz show scandal. So there was I feel like there was a lot of eyes on them. I know, as far as government was concerned and regulations and whatnot.
Yeah, I want to say that there was something about, and I don't know if you read about this, but I want to say I remember reading something that they kept the prize levels really low so that there wouldn't be any extra attention given to whether they thought there was going to be a scandal,
That could be, and because for a long time there was no cash prizes, it was just the prizes. And there was eventually a cash prize round later that I'll talk about in a little bit.
Right.
But yeah, that totally makes sense to me. So originally it aired at the 11:30 time slot, and it was actually done live, which I thought was interesting. But I suppose back then, a lot more things were done live than not. I know, even in the radio days, serialized dramas and things like that were recorded live, live to tape sort of thing. Very quickly became very popular. And like I said, I think that was a lot just to do with the fact that it was refreshing to now know that the game shows were legitimate and, sort of clear the air after all the scandals. But it quickly rose to the top of NBC's ratings. They tried to do some primetime editions of it. They did two, one which was hosted by Hugh Downs himself, but neither of them really lasted. I don't think either of them were even on for more than a year or a season or whatever. But the daytime version, it did very, very well. And it's interesting to note that at some point the powers that be shifted the show to 11 a.m., but it didn't kill it. So maybe situations like these are why they think they can continue doing it without killing shows.
Yeah, I don't know.
But when they did that, it was also the same time color started to come around. The old advertising phrase, "This is the year color is here."
Yeah.
So it didn't really make much of an impact on the show overall, but they did have to make some changes to the rebus puzzles to make things, that obviously for broadcast safe colors and whatnot, but also they had to take caution with the colors of the unrevealed panels versus the revealed panels of the rebus puzzles, so they didn't clash with each other or make it too visually distracting and hard to see.
It's interesting. A quick little side note here. This was the last of NBC's black and white shows to actually convert over on November 7th, 1966. It made NBC the first all-color television network.
Oh, wow.
How about that?
Oh, and I think that's what that peacock logo is all about, right? That's why there's all the different colors in it?
It showed all the different colors. Yeah, that could be.
I bet there's a connection there. Anyways,
yeah.
We'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
So anyways, this series is continuing on. That was 66 when they switched to color. In 69, a few years later, Hugh Downs steps down. Woo!
You crack yourself up on a regular basis.
I didn't even mean to that time. Oh man, that was good. And then Bob Clayton steps in to be the host, and a man named Wayne Howell comes in to be the announcer. And so I mentioned earlier about cash prizes. This is when the cash prize was announced, or
introduced, and it was done through what is now really famous, but the money shower, where the contestants are in a booth and then a bunch of bills are blown around by giant fans, and they have to just catch whatever they can, and that's what they win.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it was like different valued bills. I think maybe up to 100, but starting at 5. And then you had to like catch them and put them in a little drawer in the booth, and whatever was in the drawer at the end of the however long you had was however much money you got to keep. And of course, you see that all the time now. And
well, actually, I think that's now even considered passe. You don't see it anymore.
Well, right, yeah, you don't see it anymore, but it was definitely a thing. There's a short-lived show on TBS called 10 Items or Less. A very much overlooked and underrated show, but it's about a grocery store, and they put on a promotion where they do that, but they fill the booth with change. So they're just like blowing pennies and quarters and nickels around at everybody.
Oh my gosh. All right.
That's great. Anyways, where were we? Yes, the early 70s when the Money Showers segment was introduced. At one point, apparently the advertisers really wanted Ed McMahon to be the host. And so they made that change, and they brought in Ed McMahon as the host. He did not last long. Viewers did not like him, which frankly I agree with. I'm not Ed McMahon's biggest fan.
Yeah, I don't think he's spectacular. I think he's definitely an American treasure, but not for me.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, Publishers Clearinghouse Sweepstakes was cool, I guess.
Yeah, Star Search.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, he was also on the Tonight Show forever.
Well, right, but like, I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan, but I can see why everybody else is.
I guess. Anyways, he didn't last. Viewers complained, and so they changed back to Bob Clayton, who continued running through the end of the series, which ended up being March 23rd, 1973. Which, by the way, makes Concentration the longest continually running game show on NBC. There's a lot of qualifiers there, but it does indeed hold a record.
and there's also like only on the second Tuesday of the month in leap years.
Right.
It's now the longest.
Game shows beginning with the letter C that started on NBC in the 50s.
Oh my god.
No, yeah, longest running continually running game show on NBC though. That's still pretty significant, I would say.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure.
And so yeah, what did I say? March 73. So what? September, a few months later, that same year, they brought it back for syndication. I guess maybe it's just cheaper to do things for syndication, or you make more money because you can sell to more networks. But it continued running for another 5 years after that. And really, it was the same show, a few minor adjustments here and there, which I didn't even make note of. Didn't seem that big a deal. But we did see the first bonus round in this edition. Like I said before, it was just you solved the Rebus puzzle and that's it. This first bonus round was you got 10 seconds to solve 2 Rebus puzzles, which man, I would fail that 100%. I don't know that I could do one Rebus puzzle in 10 seconds.
I agree wholeheartedly.
I'm sitting there like George, like I would say George Burns and still not know that the answer is George Burns.
Personally, I would say Jakarj Burns, but that's just me.
Yeah. By the way, this I'm not familiar with the host of this syndicated version. Jack Nars is his name.
Doesn't ring a bell to me.
Did not find much on him, but Johnny Olson was the announcer of that one, so
nice.
At least we got one heavy hitter. But yeah, like I said, that ran for 5 years and just kind of petered off after a while, but clearly showed that there was a desire for the show or the game in general. And then in 87, they specifically wanted to bring back Concentration and got Alex Trebek as our host. And as Christian mentioned in the news, he was also hosting Jeopardy at the same time, apparently hosting a third show, which I was not aware of.
Yeah.
So what a workhorse that dude is. And again, mostly similar to the original versions. Like I said, the idea of the matching with the wilds provided the third square. A few other like increase in prize values that just happens with inflation. That sort of stuff changed. But again, the biggest addition of this version was the car winning bonus round, the winner's circle of car prizes.
Right.
And really, the thing with those car rounds is, it's really interesting because I bet in the 80s when you're on that show, those cars were incredible. And then a few years later, they were probably garbage. But now you watch it again and they are incredible again. There's so many cool cars. Like, I'm not a car guy. I can't say what's actually a good car on there, but aesthetically, I would take any one of those in a heartbeat. They are awesome.
Because they're classics, man.
Exactly.
They look great. I mean, it's so funny because I laugh because Jenny has a 66 Mustang, and I look at her and I'm like, this is the coolest car ever. And I drive it around when she lets me, and I love it. I absolutely love it. But when it came out, it was considered a high school graduate's car. Like, it was meant for people who are graduating high school. It was cheap enough. Everybody drove a Mustang. It was not like a cool car to have. It was just like, it was just a car.
Starter car, kind of.
And now it is such a classic that, I mean, no matter where I go in Atlanta, people are waving hello to me. It doesn't matter what neighborhood I'm in.
Right. Well, and I think that's the thing with a lot of collectibles is it's always the one that people don't care about initially, right? Because then they treat it like junk, they throw it away, but then all of a sudden it becomes scarce because nobody kept it. You know, It's the same deal with comic books. Like everybody thinks X-Men #1 is super valuable, and I've got the first issue of this iconic series. It's like, okay, but it was also the most printed comic book of all time, and everybody kept theirs. So who's buying it?
It's only what you want to. It's only what people are willing to pay for. That's the value.
There you go. So, anyways, back to classic concentration. It was popular enough. It ran for several years, but I guess as time went on, it just didn't cut the mustard. We saw the last episode September 20th, 1991. But interestingly enough, it didn't actually stop then, because in the same time slot until 93, they ran reruns of it.
Wow.
So obviously it was popular enough to continue in the same time slot. They just didn't want to pay for new episodes of it, I guess. Huh. And that's the last we've seen of it for now, as we've speculated with many other shows in the past. Who knows? There's probably bound to be another version of this somewhere. There's such a it's in the title itself, classic feeling to this show, that I have to imagine that at some point someone's going to say, hey, let's bring that back.
I would agree. I feel like it's definitely something that would be worth another touching of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as far as, proof that it's popular, or proof of its popularity, I suppose you could say, Milton Bradley made tons of home game editions of these. I don't remember the count, but just
24. I remember the count because I read that and I was like, what?
Yeah.
24.
Tied with Password for the game show with the most home versions.
Wow.
Which I think we mentioned that in the Password episode. I don't recall exactly, but I do remember talking about how many there were. But yeah. And then another interesting note here, along with those shows I mentioned earlier, Tic-Tac-Toe and 21, those three shows are the only ones, the Barry Enright, Jack Barry, Dan Enright productions, that had international adaptations. Apparently none of their other shows did. And I just thought that was interesting because it was also one of those first ones that was brought up after the scandals. So, again, to me, I think a lot of what helped this show latch on is that there were just, people were hungry for a real game show, and it just was at the right place at the right time kind of deal.
Yeah, to me, it definitely has that nice feeling that you talk about, where like an old, nice, comfortable pair of shoes. I agree. I really loved it. I guess is that it for history? Should we go ahead and rate them?
Yeah, let's dive into it.
What should we rate this week?
Cars,
I guess we could, or cards. Or washer dryers.
Washer dryers. Let's do washer dryers. I like that.
Okay, we're doing washer dryers. All right, I'm giving this one a clear 4 washer and dryers because to me, I love it. It just feels so comfortable. It's great. I remember Trebek doing this show, and what I loved about Trebek is he was a little bit looser in this than he was in Jeopardy. Especially when I go back and watch it nowadays, I'm like, it's kind of fun to see him have like a little bit more of an opinion, a little bit more of a sense of humor. He feels a little bit more real to me in this show. And it's pretty approachable. it seems like, I mean, this is a children's game that you grew up with playing that most kids can play. I can't play it well by any means, but so I feel like that it's great, and I do love the winner's circle thing with the cars. Just is always fun to me. That, and what was it Scrabble or Password also had that. That was just you saw all those cars sitting around that stage and you were like, oh, this is so cool,
Right.
So I just really liked it. So I'm going 4 washer dryers for this one. How about you?
I think I'm going to agree. I was going to go lower. I was thinking a 3.5 or 3.75 washer dryers, but I'm going to go with a 4 simply because I think my personal skill set is making me want to go lower. Basically, I agree with everything you said. I think it is a phenomenal show. The gameplay is great. There's so much strategy and everybody is familiar with it. It's approachable. My beef with it is that it's very, very difficult, but I think that's me. Like, obviously people are solving these left and right on the show, so people get it. So I think my initial rating was going to be lower due to maybe an inaccessibility, but you sort of swayed me and wanted me to bump it back up to 4. Also, I wanted to double touch on that point that Alex Trebek on this show is so great, and he's so much more approachable and less hoity-toity, I guess, as he is on Jeopardy. It's just much less formal. He feels like he's such a cool guy, and I love him as host on this show, and it's great to see both sides of him in both of those shows, and it's even better to know that he was doing them at the same time, that he's able to jump back and forth between those two, and so overall, it's just a fantastic show, so I'm landing on a 4. But I have to say my dogs rate this show much, much lower. They hated it.
What?
I don't know what it was, but every sound, they barked their heads off. They don't bark at the TV. Even when like doorbells and stuff like that happen, they don't bark at the TV. They bark at every sound in concentration.
Really?
Yeah, every single one.
That's hilarious to me.
Yeah.
I wow.
So if anybody else out there, if their dogs bark at concentration or any game shows, really, I'd like to hear about that.
Well, I think, and by the way, I don't quote me on this, but I think I remember reading somewhere that one of the sounds from concentration was actually used on Saturday Night Live for like the ring-in of their different game shows that they do. I don't know if it was Jeopardy or one of them.
Okay.
So you'll have to Google that and then run those tapes with the dogs in the room.
Right.
See if it's just like hitting a certain wavelength or something.
Yeah. Because a couple of the bells do sort of sound like doorbells, and they will bark at the actual doorbell, but they don't tend to bark at television doorbells. So it was just really interesting. It definitely struck a nerve with them.
That's interesting. All right, well, Mike, that's all the time we've got for today.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, everyone at Buzzer Blog. Thank you, everyone who listens. Thank you to those who are writing us. Thank you to those who are giving us Stump the Chump questions. Please keep those coming.
Absolutely. Tune in again next time when we'll bring you the latest and greatest in the world of game shows, and we'll also bring you a brand new featured show, too.
And, of course, you can always catch us online. Check it out at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and, of course, tellthemwhatthey'vewon.com.
And soon Mike's going to be starting our TikTok feed, too.
Oof, you do not want me on TikTok, trust me.
Please subscribe, share, like, and drop a review if you've liked what you heard.
And if you didn't like it, let's try a quick audio rebus.
Okay.
Key plus the center of an avocado. The number after 1. Not mine, but blank. Santa's Little Helper.
Ah, I got it. See you next week, Mike.
Bye, Tom.
You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won, a JTech audio production, copyright 2020. No part of this podcast may be reproduced by anyone without the express written consent of the creators. For more information or to contact us, please go to tellthemwhatthey'vewon.com. All right, Mike, what'd you learn this week?
I learned, thanks to Christian, that this show may have subconsciously been at least somewhat influential in my desire to go into broadcast design initially.
Really?
I remember as a kid watching the animation of the panels reveal that Christian was like, he told us it was the first live use of 3D.
3D, yeah.
It's such a small, subtle effect, but I remember thinking it was really cool when I was a kid.
And I had no idea the amount of production that went behind it. So obviously it wouldn't have consciously been like, oh, I want to do that. But,
Right.
I think there's something there where I watched that and then,
Then you ended up working on television.
Exactly. So what about you?
So I've learned that just how much I really do miss rebuses, and I think more in particular rebuses, the rebuses that my dad used to give to me in the little beer caps. And now I may have to go out and buy some Mickeys just to look at them. And also I obviously I miss my pops too.
Yeah, I hear you there. Well, this one's for Tom's dad.
Copyright 2020, a JTech audio production.